If you would turn to 1 Samuel chapter 24, we're still in our series titled Israel Wants a King. We've been studying mostly about King Saul. King David is not king yet, and he is being pursued by Saul. Saul has been trying to catch him and kill him, all out of jealousy. And that's what it's all been about, out of jealousy and pride. Saul was jealous because after David killed Goliath, David became the most popular man in the kingdom, and no one other than the Lord, no one has called for David to be king. None of Saul's subjects have called for that. They've made little songs and tunes about how Saul had killed his thousands and David had killed his 10,000s, and that just kind of rubbed salt in the wound is all that did. But David has, through the Lord's guidance, of course, has escaped Saul during all this so far. Tonight we're going to see in chapter 24 where David or Saul catches up with David unknowingly. David has gone up in the mountains and in a stronghold and basically a cave, and Saul pursues him up that way, but doesn't actually know he's in that particular cave until later. And we'll get to that all that in this chapter. We're going to start with chapter 23, verse 29, because that's where this part of the story begins. I'm not sure why this wasn't included in chapter 24, but that's the Lord's plan, so I'm not going to deal with that. Chapter 23, verse 29, and David went up from thence and dwelt in strongholds at En-gedi. And it came to pass when Saul was returned from following the Philistines that it was told him, saying, Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi. Now, remember Saul, the Philistines had come into the land again. They'd gone over their boundary, if you will, and had come in, and so Saul had gone to run them out again, and he does that. That's what this is referring to here. Verse 2, Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel and went to seek David and his men upon the rocks of the wild goats. So, if you've ever seen mountain goats, and I'm assuming that's what he's talking about here, because they've gone up, it says, upon the rocks. This is a very rocky place, and if you don't know, do a little research on that part of the country, or that part of the world. And the caves there are very large, and or can be. Some were dug out to make it larger for different reasons. Some were that way, I believe, because of the flood. The Noah's day, they were formed during that time. But whatever reason, there were a lot of large caves, and you see that not just in Israel. You see it in Saudi Arabia. You see it in Persia and in Egypt and places like that. There's archaeologists that have gone over there and found these caves, and for whatever reason, there are some large caves there. In the old days, there were places where bad people hid out, or in this case, where good people hid out from bad people. The other way around. And it was in a place that was easily defended. They had the high ground. Verse 3, and he came to the sheepcotes by the way, where was a cave. So one of the practices in their day with sheep or goats, whatever they were, herds of them, the shepherds would, sometime around noontime, they'd take a break from their grazing and would lay down and rest. The sheep would. And so it's my understanding that that's what this is referring to. And so this is saying that possibly this is around noontime when this took place. And Saul went in to cover his feet, and David and his men remained in the sides of the cave. Now there's all kinds of speculations on what this means when he says he went in to cover his feet. Now, John Gill, and he quotes some other older Jewish writers, all agree that he went in basically to use the restroom and to get some rest from the heat, to get out of the sun and get some rest. And this covering his feet is what this is referring to. Is in their day, especially him being royalty, would have had a longer, I don't know what like a skirt type dress thing that him being king, he would have wore. His soldiers might have had something shorter than he did, but he had something longer. And so in this instance, if that's what he was there to do, he'd be able to cover himself and keep himself private. That was the purpose of it, or one of the purposes of the length of the skirt. And much like we think of the Scottish, much like a kilt. You know, it's very similar. And the men of David said unto him, or let me back up. Saul and David and his men remained in the sides of the cave. Now remember, David had about 600 men with him. Saul has now got 3,000 with him. That wouldn't have been much of a fight. Those 3,000 should have been able to handle 600 pretty easy in most cases. Now remember, David's got the Lord behind him, so it wouldn't have been as easy as they thought. But we don't see a battle here. And the men of David said unto him, Behold, the day of which the Lord said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thine hand, that thou mayest do to him as it shall seem good unto thee. Now remember, David's being pursued by Saul, and Saul has been very hateful and very very wicked towards David for no reason at all. David could very easily kill him right here, and that's what his men are suggesting. Now you notice they're talking, they're in this cave, obviously, David and all his men. Again, that tells us if he's got 600 men and they're in there talking and Saul's not hearing them, one, the cave is very large to hold that many men. Two, if Saul is not hearing them, either they're way back in the back of the cave or Saul has gone to sleep. You know, if he's gone in there to rest, very possibly he took a nap. It's that time of the day. And it came to pass, or let me back up. Then David arose and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe privately, so in secret. And I take that to mean that maybe even David's men didn't know he done it. Because remember, they were trying to get him to kill Saul. That would have stopped all this if he had. But instead, he cuts a piece of Saul's skirt off. And he said unto his men, The Lord forbid that I should do this thing unto my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch forth mine hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord. Again, David is acting like a godly man here. He knows that Saul is still the king. Saul was anointed by the Lord. It's not the Lord's time yet for Saul to leave the throne, and David knows that. And so he tells his men, you know, it's not right. It's not right for me to kill him. It's not time for him to die. And I'm not. And David, I believe David knows that he's not the one that's going to kill Saul. He doesn't know how it's going to play out yet, but he knows that he can't do it. And he knows that that's because of the Lord, not just because of him, but that's the Lord's wishes. So David stayed his servants with these words and suffered them not to rise against Saul. So any of the rest of them could have done it, but David stopped them. He said, "You just leave him alone." But Saul rose up out of the cave and went on his way. So Saul got up and left, went back to his troops. David also arose afterward and went out of the cave and cried after Saul, saying, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed himself. The act of a dutiful servant, right? That was what you did to a king in their day. Even though Saul was after him to kill him, he bowed before him as his servant and refers to him as my lord the king. So he properly addresses Saul. And notice it is David who goes after Saul. Saul doesn't even know David's there until now. And David said to Saul, "Wherefore hearest thou men's words, saying, Behold, David seeketh thy hurt?" Why have you been listening to other men? Why when other men have told you that I was going to hurt you, I was going to try to kill you, why did you listen to them? You know me better than that. Certainly he did. Behold, this day thine eyes have seen how that the Lord had delivered thee today into mine hand in the cave. The Lord brought you here. I could have killed you, but that's not the plan. And some bade me kill thee, but mine eye spared thee. And I said, I will not put forth mine hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. So David truly had no bad feelings towards Saul. He comes out and pleads his case to him and tells him, I could have killed you. My troops could have killed you. We didn't. All because of the Lord. Why? Because he was the Lord's anointed. Saul is still king. It was not for them to do that. Verse 11, Moreover, my father, see the skirt of thy robe in my hand. Well, why does he call him father here? Well, remember, he's his father-in-law. David is married to Saul's daughter. This is his father-in-law. And remember, David and Jonathan, Saul's son, are the best of friends. I mean, they're just like brothers. They have been before David married into the family. So he thinks of Saul as a father figure. And he tells him, see the skirt of thy robe in my hand. Look what I cut off of you. I could have killed you. For in that I cut off the skirt of thy robe and killed thee not. Know thou and see that there is neither evil nor transgression in my hand, and I have not sinned against thee, yet thou huntest my soul to take it. Even though you're out here hunting me, and this was not an easy task. You can think Saul and 3,000 men have been out there for who knows how long hunting David down, and Saul has killed other men and other people, other families, a whole family he killed except for one, the priest. He killed the priest and his family all except for one of his sons, because he thought David was after him. And this whole time Saul is, and I still say it goes back to the evil spirit that the Lord had put on him. That evil spirit was driving him insane. It's almost like, some people who are diagnosed with being bipolar have, some say, multiple personalities sometimes. That's what it's almost like. It's like when he's his normal self, he's okay. But when that evil spirit is on him, he's a totally different person. And so notice he's listening to David. He's not stopped him, not interrupted his speech. He's listening. And David goes on to tell him that I could have killed you. If I got that close, if I got close enough to cut your skirt off, I could have killed you. And he says, because I haven't killed you, that should be proof that I'm telling you the truth and that the other people that you've been listening to are lying. The Lord judge between me and thee, and the Lord avenge me of thee, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. I'm not going to kill you. We don't know what David would have done if Saul would have attacked him right here. Would he have defended himself? Well, according to David here, probably not. Saul might have killed him. But that wasn't the Lord's plan. We know that. But according to what David says here, the Lord is the judge between the two of them. That's the way, if we have a grievance with another person, whether they're a child of God or not, that's the way we need to look at it. The Lord is the judge between us and whoever we have a problem with. That's why we try to encourage people to go to the Word of God before you get so bogged down in a disagreement that hatred takes over and pride takes over. Let the Lord be the judge. Verse 13, as with the proverb of the ancients, wickedness proceedeth from the wicked, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. Well, that kind of goes back on Saul, don't it? Wickedness proceedeth from the wicked. How has Saul acted in this matter? Very wickedly. But again, he says, I'm not going to kill you. It's not for me to do. He says, after whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom dost thou pursue? After a dead dog? After a flea? Who are you chasing and why? Do you even know? Saul don't even know for sure why he's chasing David. He just knows he hates him. That's all he knows. You ever seen somebody or known somebody that was so filled with hatred that they don't even remember what the hatred started with? And I think that's where Saul's at this time. He just knows he needs to kill David, and he doesn't care why. Doesn't remember why. And again, he tells him, I'm not going to kill you. Tells him that multiple times. After whom, let's see, verse 15, the Lord therefore be judge, and judge between me and thee, and see, and plead my case, and deliver me out of thy hand. So he's pleading with him. He's telling him, let the Lord be the judge in this matter. And he's asking Saul not to kill him. Don't do this thing. I mean, he's already in enough trouble with the people he's already killed. Now he's got the one that he's been after all this time. You know, it was a pretty serious matter back in their day in Israel. You kill the priest and all the priest's family. That's a very serious, in the eyes of the Lord, that was a very serious matter. Saul justified it because they had helped hide David, but remember, what was his name, Amalek? He didn't even know what David was doing. David didn't tell him why he came to visit. He just said he was on a mission for the king. Didn't tell him why or what it was about. And so Amalek helped him out, fed him and his troops, and give them a place to stay temporarily, and then sent them on their way. And then when Saul found out, he had Amalek and all his family killed except for one son, and that one son is the only priest that's left now. And you know that in the eyes of God, that couldn't have been good. Saul is just adding more to his list of offenses. Verse 16, and it came to pass when David had made an end of speaking these words unto Saul, that Saul said, Is this thy voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Saul repents of what he's been doing with David anyway. He realizes that it is David for sure, and he realizes that he is in the wrong. And he said to David, Thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil. He repents of it. And that's a good thing. You know, again, we at least don't know at this point in time. It doesn't appear that Saul is saved. There's no mention of his salvation here, but he does repent of what he's been doing to David. And, you know, even people who are not saved will, you know, the Lord can put it on their heart to be sorrowful and remorseful over something they've done. Doesn't mean that they're saved, but that happens. But it's so much so that he cried out and wept. And he said to David, Thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil, and thou hast showed this day how that thou hast dealt well with me, for as much as when the Lord had delivered me into thine hand, thou killedst me not. He said, David, you're the better man in this matter. You could have killed me. And notice Saul recognizes that it was the Lord that delivered Saul into David's hands. David, like I said, David could have easily killed him. There would have been no fight to it. But that wasn't the Lord's plan, and David knew it. For if a man find his enemy, will he let him go well away? Wherefore the Lord reward thee good for that thou hast done unto me this day. So David, he never considered Saul his enemy, did he? Saul considered David his enemy. David was just trying to be a loyal subject to the king. But at the same time, trying to save his own life too. He followed the Lord. We know that. We know the Lord was the one who led him away and guided him and protected him. And now behold, I know well that thou shalt surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in thine hand. Saul sees now that what Samuel has said several chapters back is true. David is a better man. He's better suited to be king than Saul is, and Saul sees that. And he tells him so. He says, eventually you're going to be king. It's not going to come from my bloodline. It's going to come from yours. And he says, Swear now therefore unto me by the Lord that thou wilt not cut off my seed after me, and that thou wilt not destroy my name out of my father's house. Now the common practice back then is if you had a king come in and take over who was not of the bloodline of the king before you, they killed the whole family. The previous king, they wiped out his whole family to keep to kill out that bloodline for one, and to keep it from any of his family from trying to retake the throne at any time in the future. And Saul asked him not to do that, and he doesn't. David doesn't kill Saul's family. That's done by somebody else, and we'll get to that at another time. But verse 22, and we'll finish up with this. And David sware unto Saul, and Saul went home, but David and his men gat them up into the hold. Saul gave up the chase. He sees now that his life has been spared by David. He could have easily been killed by David or any of his men, but the Lord prevented it. The Lord worked in both their lives here in that matter. Matter of fact, you see that David could have easily killed Saul in that cave, and when David came out and knelt on the ground before Saul, Saul could have killed him then, couldn't he? But he didn't. Why? It wasn't God's will. It wasn't his plan. We know the end of the story. We know eventually David becomes king. And so we know God had a plan for David. Saul, on the other hand, will eventually be killed. And we'll continue on next week as we go through some more of this story, at least for a short time. Things seem to get a little bit back to normal, but anyway, we'll start with chapter 25